Hello, my name is Virginia Hankey, and I'm the Rhode Island and Connecticut Education Specialist. And our topic today is transitioning from active duty to retirement. We also call this TAP. So many of the things that we're going to cover today would be what coverage areas or regions there are, how you would prepare for retirement, what coverage choices would be available to you, as well as other TRICARE benefit information, as well also how TRICARE works with other health insurance and where you can go for information and assistance. Let's look at the coverage areas. In the United States, we have three regions currently. We have TRICARE North, TRICARE South, and TRICARE West. We used to have 12 regions, so three regions is just a lot easier than it used to be. TRICARE Overseas also has three areas, and that's Eurasia, Africa, TRICARE Latin America and Canada, and TRICARE Pacific. Here are the three regions in the United States. The TRICARE North region is administered by Health Net Federal Services, Tri-West, or the Western region, handled by Tri-West, and Humana Military, who handles the South contract. When you look at the maps, it almost looks like the West region has a lot more in terms of beneficiaries, but the regions were divided to be equal beneficiary-wise. And when you think about the North region having Washington, D.C., it makes a lot more sense. The overseas area, TRICARE Eurasia Africa, is Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. TRICARE Latin America and Canada is just like it sounds. It's Canada, the Caribbean Basin, Central and South America, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. TRICARE Pacific, Australia, Guam, Japan, Korea, New Zealand, and the Western Pacific remote countries. Let's look at the checklist that we would have to put together when we're preparing for retirement. So what steps need to be taken now? Do I have Medicare-eligible family members? And if you're wondering why we ask that, we're going to get to that in a little bit. It's really important because the change from active duty to retirement affects anybody that's Medicare-eligible. Where are you going to live and work? And what health plans would be available to you, both through TRICARE and your employer-based insurance? What the cost of competing health plans would be, the ones that you would pick up through your employer, and would you need a supplemental insurance? First thing that we want to do, what we want to do now is as you're getting close to retirement, you're going to need to take your retirement information in and update DEERS with that retirement. You can do that by phone. Address changes to the DEERS in California, that's their number. That's their fax number. And you can also go online to the DEERS website and you can update address there, as well as through the beneficiary web enrollment, or the BWE. Probably the best thing to do when you're retiring and you're going from active duty to retirement is to go in person to get a new ID card, because your ID card is going to change. You'll be giving up that CAT card and be issued a blue ID card. So you want to take yourself and any family members into DEERS ID card facility. And you can locate those by Googling Rapid Site Locator. It'll pull up the three closest to your zip code. You can also send some changes into the Defense Manpower Data Center Support Office. Now, this is what I was talking about the change from active duty to retired. When you were on active duty status, if you had a Medicare-eligible family member, you didn't need to pick up Part B, but you need to do that when you're retiring. You want to do that before you retire because it usually takes about 3 months to get that set up, but you want to go to Social Security to take care of that. And if you're Medicare eligible due to a disability under 65, you can enroll in TRICARE Prime and it won't cost anything because you're paying for that Medicare Part B. You don't have to pay for TRICARE Prime. But TRICARE, you're going to be using TRICARE for life even though you're going to be enrolled in TRICARE Prime. When you're on terminal leave before you retire, you are going to still stay enrolled to the current MTF or military treatment facility with the primary care doctor that you've currently got under active duty orders. This is as the active duty service member. All care when you move to your new area is still going to be coordinated by that military treatment facility primary care doctor, although your family can transfer their enrollment to the new region or the change primary care doctor if it's in the same region in a different state. So who's eligible for TRICARE after retirement? It would be the retired service members and any spouses surviving spouses or qualifying former spouses. Unmarried dependent children will also be eligible for TRICARE upon retirement, and they would be eligible until the age of 21 if they're not enrolled in college, or 23 if full-time enrolled, as long as the sponsor is providing 50% of financial support. Could be eligible beyond those age limits if you have a child with a mental or physical incapacity, but that's something that you would have to coordinate through DEERS. But qualified dependents who are reaching the age of 21 or 23 can enroll in the TRICARE Young Adult Program, which will extend coverage up until the age of 26 and would remain eligible even if the parents were divorced or remarried. But any stepchildren that came with the non-service member would lose eligibility after a divorce. Let's look at the coverage choices. When you retire and your retirement paperwork is turned in, it causes an automatic disenrollment from Prime if you were in TRICARE Prime or Prime Remote. So you need to re-enroll in Prime, or Prime Remote not being available, but you would need to re-enroll in Prime in order to continue and have no break in Prime coverage. The codicil to that is you do have to live in a Prime service area, and those Prime service areas are available near most military treatment facilities and also other designated Prime service areas. But as I said, TRICARE Prime Remote is not available to retirees or their family members. So enrollment fees and copays would be expected to be applied when you do fill out that enrollment form. Most contractors do want to receive that form before the 20th of the month. And you can do that either on paper by going to a TRICARE Service Center or going to the regional contractor's website and printing out that enrollment form and calling the contractor and making arrangements to either fax in that form if you're not near a TRICARE Service Center, or you can go online to the beneficiary web enrollment and do that online. So your enrollment when you retire is going to be either with a military treatment facility primary care manager if that's available to you, or if you're farther than 30 miles from a military treatment facility, you may be enrolling to a civilian primary care manager. Military treatment facility or MTF care is going to be on a space available basis because their priority obviously will have to be active duty service members and their families enrolled in Prime. So in order to keep all costs as low as possible, you're always going to want to coordinate all care through your primary care doctor when you're enrolled in Prime. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. When you travel or move with that Prime coverage, you're going to want to travel, if you're traveling to another region, you're going to need to do a portability form. And that enrollment portability is usually twice in 1 year. So you'd enroll, let's say, in the North region in Groton, Connecticut, and spend winters down in Kings Bay, Georgia. When you transfer back, it would have to be to where you originally filled out your retired Prime. And you could also have a split enrollment. You could have children that are going to college in another region, and you could have that enrollment be split between two regions. And the payment for that would be through wherever the sponsor's enrollment has been processed. But you want to check for any availability for primary care or for Prime when you're moving before you move. But if you're moving overseas, there is no TRICARE Prime available to you. You'd be covered by TRICARE Standard, and the Prime option is not available to you, your family. So again, when we're talking about retired Prime coverage, all primary care would have to be received from that primary care manager or gatekeeper, and they would have to refer you out for civilian specialty care. Otherwise, it'll go point of service, and we'll talk about what the point of service means. So if you're going to be traveling out of the area for a short vacation, you want to make sure that all routine care has been received before you travel. And if you get sick with the flu or something happens and you're not feeling well and you need to see a doctor, then you'll want to coordinate that urgent care referral with your primary care doctor. Or if you can't reach them, you're going to want to call that regional contractor, giving them the name of where you're going, the date you're going, and a good phone number so that they can pull up that information. However, if this is an emergency, please call 911 and go to your local or nearest emergency room first before you call either your primary care provider or your contractor. So probably the best thing to do if you're going on a long trip and you're going to be gone more than a month, you're going to want to transfer your enrollment to a new region or new primary care doctor if that 30 days time frame is going to exceed that 30 days. So we were talking about the point of service option, and what that means is when you're seeking care outside of your primary care doctor and it's not on an emergency basis, you need to get a referral to all specialists by your primary care manager. So if you just go to see somebody, you're going to have a $300 point of service deductible, and then after that deductible is met, TRICARE is only going to pay half, and will only pay if the provider is authorized by TRICARE for payment. And with that point of service, that $300 maximum, that deductible, and then that 50% cost share comes into play. And non-network providers can bill 15% above and beyond what TRICARE allows, but none of these costs, that $300 deductible or that 50% cost share, is going to apply to your maximum out-of-pocket of $3,000. U.S. Family Health Plan is a prime option as well. It's available in 6 U.S. areas. We'll look at what those areas are. But they're very much like Prime in that you need to coordinate all care through a primary care doctor. And if you do enroll in U.S. Family Health Plan, you waive all your rights to any care at a military treatment facility. You can research any of the information about the U.S. Family Health Plan at their website, which is located right down on the www.usfhp.com link there. You can also call their customer service line. These are the 6 designated providers for U.S. Family Health Plan. Martin's Point up in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and parts of New York, and also parts of Pennsylvania. Brighton Marine in Massachusetts, which extends down into Rhode Island and northern Connecticut. And it's also recently expanded into western Rhode Island. And they have plans to expand into eastern Connecticut. St. Vincent Catholic Medical Centers, New York City, Long Island, parts of Connecticut, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. Johns Hopkins Medicine in the Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland area, Washington, D.C., and parts of Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware, and West Virginia. Christus Health, parts of Texas and southwest Louisiana. And PacMed, or Pacific Medical Centers, in the Puget Sound area of Washington State. TRICARE Standard and TRICARE Extra is if you did not enroll in Prime, this would be almost like the default setting. If you're eligible in DEERS, you would have TRICARE Extra and TRICARE Standard. You don't pay an enrollment fee for these plans, and the nice thing about them, they're like a PPO plan where you don't need a referral to be seen by a specialist. You just call the doctor up and make an appointment. Prior authorization is required for some of the services, but you'd want to check with your regional contractor on what those services are. Generally speaking, it's things like the 9th behavioral health visit, or if you were undergoing an organ transplant, but you do want to look on the contractor's website and see what prior authorizations they do require. But for general medical, not required, and for labs and such. With TRICARE Standard and Extra, you need to see any provider that takes TRICARE. If they happen to be a network provider that we have a contract with, that falls under TRICARE Extra. Non-network providers that just take TRICARE, that falls under the TRICARE Standard option. We pay 5% more for network providers than we do for non-network providers. We have a contract with those network providers, and we may contract with them to accept a percentage up to 100% of what TRICARE allows. So if we negotiate a rate with a provider at 85% of what TRICARE allows, you can figure that your cost shares are going to be a lot less than if you see a non-network doctor. And all network providers will file claims for you, whereas non-network providers may not. You still have the option of being seen at a military treatment facility, but it's going to be on space available or space A. With both Standard and Extra, you have a deductible of $150 for an individual, $300 for family. Those do apply to that maximum out-of-pocket of $3,000. If you, as I said, if you see a non-network provider, your cost shares are going to be higher because it's going to be based on that 100% of what TRICARE allows, and they can bill you 15% above and beyond what TRICARE allows. Uh, You might need to pay them up front and then file a claim for reimbursement if they don't file claims for you. So you'll need to check with them first to make sure that they will or will not file claims.